I'm Zach Jutras. Welcome to the Debrief, where we have quick and focused conversations that matter to you. Let's get into it. So for this episode, we're talking about the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. They recently did some research and they found that temporary foreign workers are not taking jobs that youth necessarily want. Joining me now is Bérengère Fouqueray, a research analyst of the CFIB. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Zach.
So, what led you to conduct this research? What led the CFIB to do this research?
Well, we've seen a lot of conversation online around the topic of temporary foreign workers, and there's this idea that they're taking youth from Canadian jobs from Canadian youth. Sorry, and we'd recently done a report on youth unemployment and the relationship between small businesses and youth. So we wanted to delve further into that research and look at whether or not temporary foreign workers are taking jobs from youth.
And obviously, when people hear that this is the research you did and then the connection that you're trying to maybe dispel, what led you to that? What's getting that conversation going that temporary foreign workers are potentially taking jobs of youth? What are you seeing?
I mean, it's a conversation we see a lot both in the news, at the government level. I think this misunderstanding of the temporary foreign worker program and this idea that it's preventing youth from getting jobs during a time of really high youth unemployment. But what we've seen is that actually the jobs that temporary foreign workers are doing tend to be the jobs that youth aren't as interested in applying for and taking. So they supplement, temporary foreign workers are supplementing this gap in the labor force that isn't being met by Canadian youth and isn't being met by Canadian labor in general.
And what are some of those jobs, positions, conditions that Canadian youth are avoiding or maybe are not particularly interested in?
So what we've noticed is we asked youth what jobs they'd be interested in and what jobs they'd be willing to relocate for. And nearly half of youth aren't interested in doing jobs that require overnight shifts or frequent and heavy physical labor. And over a third aren't interested at all in looking for jobs that pay at or near minimum wage and jobs that are exposed to the elements. There's more desire to do jobs in the service sector, which is the last category we surveyed on, but there's very little desire to relocate outside of their current city or town for those jobs. So youth will be willing to do these, but they're not going to move to another city, or they're less likely to, and they're much less likely to move to, for example, a small town or a rural, isolated community.
And when we mention youth is about 15 to 24, I believe is how Canada describes youth, correct?
Yeah, in our research, we specified StatsCan defines it as 15 to 24. So that's the same definition or parameters we used in our research.
So there are some limitations as well when it comes to potentially, going to school or not being able to do those late night shifts. So and then I guess that's another personal preference maybe for heavy lifting and moving abroad or moving a bit further out or just traveling further. Where do temporary foreign workers come into place now? So these are the type of jobs that they're willing to do?
It's the kind of jobs that they're being hired for. So how the temporary foreign worker program works is that if there's a persistent labor shortage and a business hasn't been able to fill that shortage domestically, they have to prove that they've tried and haven't been able to hire for that job domestically, then they're allowed to apply to try and hire someone from abroad to come in and do that job. But yeah, on the topic of what you mentioned with youth, a lot of these jobs are jobs that just wouldn't work for youth who are either under 18 and can't relocate or youth that are in school.
Mhm.
So it's not just jobs that youth don't want to do, it's jobs youth can't necessarily do. And these are jobs, nearly a third of temporary foreign workers are harvesting laborers. And then the other top occupations, according to the government, are nursery and greenhouse laborers, food service supervisors, cooks, livestock laborers. A lot of these are either in very rural areas or they're jobs that require physical effort or exposed to the elements. In the case of food and cooks, it's jobs that tend to have overnight shifts. So all jobs that youth either aren't interested in or it's difficult for them to do given the life stage that they're at.
And how are these positions being filled by? So they're being filled by temporary foreign workers. How is that helping small businesses and medium-sized businesses?
It's helping them stay open. So half of small businesses who use the program say that it's helped them stay open and continue employing Canadian workers. That's up to 76% for hospitality businesses, which is usually where a lot of youth get their start in the workforce.
Mhm.
And 9 in 10 small businesses have said that it would be difficult filling positions that had been held by temporary foreign workers with local employees. And so this means that businesses can keep operating, and it also means that they can keep hiring Canadian youth. An example we often use is if I'm looking for a chef in my restaurant and all of my front of house staff is Canadian youth, but I need that chef to stay open. If I can't hire that chef domestically and I don't have access to a temporary foreign worker, I might have to roll back operations or even shut down my business, which impacts labor throughout, not just temporary foreign workers, but also Canadians.
And I think maybe to break a myth of this, not no business is hiring completely temporary foreign workers. There's caps on how many people you can hire, correct?
Yeah, there's caps and you have to apply and the government has to approve your application. And if they reject your application, you don't get reimbursed for all the fees and all the paperwork that's gone in. So it's a very labor and costly intensive process. So small businesses aren't doing this if they can find labor within their town or domestically.
And to you, when you did this research, was anything surprising to you?
I was surprised by, I think, the breakdown of temporary foreign workers where they work, but also how much it aligned with jobs youth don't necessarily want to do. Um, but just, yeah, it really does dispel the fact that these aren't jobs that youth would be open and willing to do if the positions were open, because it's jobs that youth aren't taking, full stop.
Now, you didn't just do this research and then say that's that. You put together some recommendations. So we'll start with the recommendations that you're giving to the federal government when it comes to this temporary foreign workers program. What are you suggesting they do?
We'd like the federal government to protect and maintain the program. Like I mentioned, it's very important for small businesses. It helps keep them open. Also, to grandfather existing foreign workers by allowing employers to extend their work permits, because we're hearing a lot of a lot of employers who are losing their temporary foreign workers and they can't extend their permits. And then prioritizing and expanding permanent residency pathways for these temporary foreign workers, helping them stay in the country once they're here and have, contributed and have a job, etc. But also, a new recommendation of ours is to introduce occupation based flexibility within the program. So, creating categories for jobs that are consistently hard to fill. Things like jobs with overnight shifts or physically demanding labor, jobs that are hard to fill both in rural areas but also in urban settings. And then we'd also like to maintain federal oversight of the program to ensure consistent rules nationwide because it has economy wide impact. And so it should be overseen by the federal government.
And finally, what are your recommendations for when it comes to small business and medium-sized businesses and hiring youth? How can they attract more youth to their businesses?
Well, a big thing is right now, small businesses, although they hire a lot of youth, 80% of them have hired youth in the past 3 years, it's very expensive to hire and train someone with no or little experience. So we're advocating for lowering the cost of hiring youth. So things like reducing payroll taxes or having targeted incentives like employment insurance holidays for youth hires, having refundable tax credits for training or co-op and internship programs, and also just general broad-based tax relief to benefit all businesses so there's not winners and losers. Then also expanding work integrated learning. So like I mentioned, things like co-ops and internship. And simplifying hiring support. So cutting red tapes and streamlining applications to existing youth programs like Canada Summer Jobs. So all these programs that the federal and provincial governments run. And then on the youth side, giving them better access and improving access to wraparound support. So things that teach them, skills they need to thrive in the workforce, and then improving job awareness. So giving up to date and accessible labor market information so youth know where those shortages are and where the future job opportunities are going to be when they decide what career path they want to take.
Perfect. Bérengère Fouqueray is a research analyst with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.